So there's two types of people that call me. One is that it's itching, that doesn't see anything. And if they've been itching for, usually if they say, I ask them, how long you've been itching? If they say 2 months, chances are we're going to find bed bugs.
Okay.
If it's bed bugs.
Welcome to the GrayHawk DJC podcast. In today's podcast, we talk with Don Brooks, the owner of Doffdon Pest Control. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Hey, Don, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Pretty good. All right, awesome. Well, thank you and welcome to the show.
Okay.
I know we don't really know each other, but I reached out to you and you just kind of wanted to come on. So what made you want to come on the show, I guess?
Well, I had told you earlier that I had done a radio, 5 minutes on a radio, and it turned out really well. It was actually pretty funny, and I got a lot of calls from it, and I thought, well, why not do a podcast?
Right.
Because bed bugs are very interesting. They don't sound like it when you first start off, but they are interesting. It's not like a roach or an ant.
Right.
It's a completely different type of creature.
Well, I am looking forward to this because you got a lot of stuff to tell us. But you are the owner of Doffdon Pest Control, right?
Yeah.
But before we start, how did you come up with the name Doffdon?
So Doffdon, there's a couple things that actually made me choose the word Doffdon. Doff is like 11th century English. Basically, back around Shakespeare's time, when you went into a restaurant and you wore a hat, they would say, "Doff your hat, sir." Or basically remove it.
Yeah.
And then if you don a winter jacket, you put on it. And so I thought, well, I'm removing bed bugs. And then I'm putting on basically a new clean, and my name happens to be Don.
Right.
So I thought Don. And it sounded better than Don Doff.
Right.
Which, by the way, when I looked at Google, you can go to GoDaddy and you can buy the names. Well, that name was like $2,500 or something for Don Doff, but Doffdon, which has a lot better sound, was like $9 or $10.
Oh, seriously?
So it was a no-brainer. I thought, well, that's meant to be.
Well, not only are you an expert in your field, you're also a very learned, educated man here. So that's awesome. Let's get to know you better. Where are you from? Tell us your background, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I was born in Peoria, Illinois.
Okay.
Well, actually, I was born in Chicago at St. Francis, but my family lived in Peoria, which is the home of Caterpillar, by the way. And every one of my family members work at Caterpillar. All my brothers work at Caterpillar. And anyway, I could not wait to get out of Illinois. I grew up in a farm town, and we had a recruiter come to our school when I was in 1982. That's when I graduated. But he came in 1980, a couple years before, from Spartan School of Aeronautics out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they were basically recruiting people to go to that school to become airline pilots. So me and a buddy said, "You want to get out of Illinois and go to Oklahoma?"
How did they pick you, though?
Well, they didn't pick. They would have taken anybody if you had a pulse.
Okay.
And a couple $1,000s to start. And then you got to get a loan because you're going to do pilot school, which is not cheap.
Right.
And so I went to Spartan School of Aeronautics, got my pilot's license. And then when I realized that I was going to be poor for years to be able to build up the hours, because I thought, I was naive. I thought you get your pilot's license and you could start flying American.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. There's different levels of your license.
Sure.
And then, so anyway, I hated flying. I still hate flying.
Okay.
And I hate flying.
But you went to pilot school.
Yeah, I went to pilot school. And it actually wasn't so bad. The crosswinds is what gets me. And so anyway, I knew I wasn't going to become a pilot. And fortunately, I'd only taken a year of my life, from 82 to 83. And then I met a girl whose dad went to OU, and he got me into OU. And then shortly thereafter, in 1986, 87, I moved to Florida.
Okay.
And I was working for my stepdad, and he fired me because I smarted off to him in front of everybody.
All right.
And as I left the building, I meet this guy in a Porsche 928, and he looked young. But the difference between him being young was I knew this car was his and not his dad's for some reason. And I rolled down the window, and I said, I love your car. And he goes, well, I like your truck. And I was like, you're driving a Porsche. You don't like this truck. And I said, well, I tell you what, this is the car I would buy if I could afford it. And he goes, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I don't do anything. I just got fired.
Okay.
And so he goes, well, pull over next light and I'll tell you what I do. I'm a stockbroker. Long story short, he got me a job.
You just met this guy?
Just met this kid.
Okay, all right.
And he introduced me to his boss. They hired me. I passed the Series 7. And that was in 1987.
Okay.
In July, and the reason why I know it was around July is because they had Black Monday, I think in October of 1987 or 88. I think it was 87. And it didn't faze me, but that was a huge drop in the market.
Right.
And I just was on the phone talking the whole time. And my boss was like, you keep that up and you're going to be successful. And so anyway, I was a stockbroker for 23 years.
When did you start? How old are you at this time?
I was about 23.
Okay.
Yeah, 22, 23.
Okay.
And then I got out of it in 2011.
What made you change careers, I guess, or get out?
Well, and I don't know, I'm sure this is my opinion,
Sure.
but there is no such thing as a stockbroker anymore. Sorry for anybody that's a stockbroker. but if you are a stockbroker, you're a asset gatherer for a money manager. There are very few stock jocks left because the SEC and the NASD basically wanted to remove all those people that were, cold calling cowboys, which is what I was.
That's true.
And we were recommending, I was recommending low price stocks, and they wanted all the penny stockbrokers out. So I had made some money, and I was trying to figure out around 2011 what I was going to do. And I looked at buying Serve Pro, an area you buy a zip code for Serve code. Those are green trucks that, do mold and fire restoration and water restoration where if you have a busted pipe or something.
You didn't want to get into any related field? It was
No.
a complete change of career.
No, actually, that's a good question. I was a stock promoter for a while, and that's still in the stock business. And I did that for a while and did pretty good too on that. And, but that, and I could go on for hours about that, but I don't want to bore anybody. But that business that was regulated out of business because of concentration on stocks and whatnot. And so then I said, well, I don't want to be in that business anymore. You could find all the deals in the world. You just couldn't get them cleared. And it's a long story, but in my personal opinion, the end of the market was around 2011 for guys like me. And so I'm 59. So in 2011, I don't know how old I was, but I was in my 40s. Upper 40s, and I thought, God, what am I going to do? Because I got some money, but I don't want to burn through it, and I'm not ready to retire.
Sure.
And so I looked at a couple franchises I was going to buy. I'd gotten a deal from a broker to buy, I think it was 5 Burger Kings up in Minnesota. And I had done some due diligence on them, and I found out that Burger King had given these guys, because it was dirt cheap. And I thought, how do you buy a Burger King for so little? When you buy it, you actually have to have a manager manage it, because I never had been in the business. That's a long story. They had their own team there, and I was buying basically into this team, but I was going to own them. Well, turns out that Burger King had asked them to remodel because they were as old as dirt.
Right.
And it was going to cost millions, and I didn't have millions.
So they just wanted someone to come in and help with that.
Yeah. And so anyway, I didn't do that, and I was thinking, my God, what am I going to do? I got to reinvent myself. Well, I have a twin sister who manages properties up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she goes, well, you ought to get into bedbugs. I go, bedbugs? I thought that was a nursery rhyme.
Right. Just out of the blue.
Out of the blue. And she goes, yeah. She goes, I'm not going to get a bonus this year because of bedbugs. I go, how does a bedbug keep you from getting a bonus? She goes, well, we spend between $10,000 and $15,000 a month on these 5 properties getting rid of bedbugs. I said, there's that many bedbugs in the apartments? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, go take a picture of his equipment. Let me look at it. And, I didn't know anything about it. So she took some pictures, and I did some research. And I'm not knocking anybody that has propane, but if you have propane, I'd like to know your insurance company, because I can barely, with dry heat, and my equipment is the most state-of-the-art equipment on the planet. One of my trailers is $100,000. It's probably a little bit more than that now to build it.
So what is the propane for, I guess?
So propane is where they bring a propane tank that obviously runs on propane, and it blows in superheated air into whether a living room or they put it through a window. Typically, they'll put it to where the most concentration of bedbugs are, and then they superheat that room. The problem is with propane, and of course, you're going to get people in the comments section, if they're able to comment on this, denying this, but I see the results. But it'll take your these little light switches, and it'll melt them.
That's how hot it is.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah, and it'll take up your tile. If you have linoleum tile, it'll the glue down there will bubble, and you'll get a bubble on it. And if it cools too fast, then it'll stay up. It's got to relax at a certain temperature, so you got to be careful that you don't let it cool down. There's a lot of things. It's kind of like when I was going into that Serve Pro, I got certified as IRCC, I believe is the acronym, and the wood cups and crowns based on how fast it dries. And so that was instrumental in basically helping me get into this, because I learned a lot about heat. And so with propane, if you have a gas stove, it's recommended that you turn the gas off outside, have the city come out and turn it off. It's not enough just to blow out your pilot lights. So there's a lot of things that are different. And anyway, I looked at this guy had propane, and I said, well, I don't want to do that. And then also I called a couple insurance companies that specialize in pest control, and I talked to them about propane, and I couldn't get anybody to even give me a quote on propane. So I said, well, there's got to be a better way. So I did a little more research, and I found that one company was using propylene glycol.
What is that now?
Well, propylene glycol sounds explosive, doesn't it? But it's not. It's just like food grade water. They put it in Pepsi and Coke. I guess it's to keep the water in the Pepsi and Coke from stagnating. But they put it in ice cream, snow cones and all that. But you would want to drink the propylene glycol that I'm using, I can tell you that. But so this company was heating up propylene glycol and pumping it through, they were heating it up using diesel, which is what I use, and that's what a lot of people use. Anyway, I got that idea. And so I did a lot of research, and I was able to find a company that basically does custom work and built these trailers, and they produce 500,000 BTUs, which most people don't even know what that means. And frankly, I couldn't explain it, good enough to make a difference. But I know it's enough to heat a 5,000 square foot house. Okay. So obviously, I've done 15,000 square foot houses, but if you had a 5,000 square foot house, the chance of that not being 2 stories would be slim to none. So what I do is when I go into a house that has to be heated, I heat the upstairs first because heat rises, and I don't care if they come downstairs, because by the time it takes me 2 hours to drag my equipment back down to the first level, that's going to stay hot. I heat it up to 150, and that's ambient temperature. And there's a big difference. People think, 150, that doesn't sound that hot, but it does to some, but it doesn't to others. But the surface temperature of metal, like if you had a doorknob, if the ambient temperature is 150, I guarantee you couldn't grab that doorknob and hold on to it for 5 or 10 seconds, because you'd have blisters on your hands.
So when you do pest control, you specialize in bed bugs, right? So take us through the process of how you're getting rid of the bed bugs, I guess.
It's a great question. No pun intended. Sure. It's a good question, because not every home, fortunately, not every home requires heat. And so when someone calls me, there's 2 types of calls. I get a call that says, I'm itching. They don't see anything, but they're just itching. Right. Well, you could be itching from fleas. You could itch from dry skin. I mean, there's a ton of different things that would cause someone to itch. The chance of it being a bug that bites, I don't know if you've ever heard of a bug called no-see. You can't see it. It's that small. Okay. But it defies the laws of gravity, but it flies, and it bites like I mean, it feels like you got stung by a hornet, and they're really small. And so anyway, that's one. You could be bit by a rogue ant, which the chance of that's virtually nil. So if someone's getting bit at nighttime, it's typically a bed bug.
Okay.
And so bed bugs don't, when they're first introduced into a new environment, they're very shy. And so they'll go into the deepest, darkest spots in a crack in the frame or under your quarter trim or in the carpet or a rug. They're going to hide really well. And then they're going to go out and feed. And they typically feed once a week for 5 minutes. But they don't all feed at the same time. So that's another interesting. But anyway, to answer your question, so there's two types of people that call me. One is that it's itching, that doesn't see anything. And if they've been itching for, usually if they say, I ask them, how long you've been itching? If they say 2 months, chances are we're going to find bed bugs.
Okay.
If it's bed bugs. If they're itching for 5 days, you could send 100 people out there. They're not going to find it. So what do? Do you wait until you're infested and you start seeing them? Or do you be proactive? And that's the decision that the customer makes. And so if they say, well, I don't want to wait for 2 months until I start seeing them everywhere, because the risk that you take doing that is that it could get so bad that then you have to have a heat treatment. And then if the customer calls me, that's one customer that's itching, doesn't see anything. And another customer that calls me and says, well, we have bed bugs.
And they know it.
Yeah. And I ask, well, how long have you had bed bugs? Well, and there's two types. One that just found them 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And the other one, we've been dealing with it for months or years in some cases. The one that is in the years, I ask, the next follow-up is, what have you done on your own? Because nobody doesn't do anything for years. They'll either go get some hot shot from Home Depot, or they'll get something, and then they'll set off foggers, or they'll spray themselves. They'll spray their mattress or clean it, and the beautiful thing about customers with bed bugs, they're some of the nicest people, and I guess part of it being nice is that they want to get rid of these things. Because once you discover that you have bed bugs, it's very difficult to sleep at night knowing that some little creature is crawling from the darkest corners of the room at night, sucking your blood. It's just this. And when a customer has that, they want to get rid of them really bad. But at any rate, so how I determine whether or not they need heat is that if they tell me 3 things, they've had bed bugs for over 6 months, they're seeing them on the walls or ceiling. Now, typically, it's not the end of the world if you see them on your drapes.
Okay. So
let's say you have you're in the master bedroom, which is usually where you find them, or the kids' room, and I'll go over that in a little bit. But let's say that the headboard is up against the wall and it's touching a curtain. Well, they'll go up the wood and they'll go right up that fabric because they love fabric, and they'll go up to the top of it and they'll start colonizing. Now, that's different. I don't think that is as serious as if they get on the walls and on your ceiling and on the corners. Typically, they'll go up on the walls and ceiling if you've been spraying a bunch of stuff that has repellent in it. Like Raid is a repellent. Not that you buy Raid for bed bugs, but that stuff's similar.
Why do you think the ceiling is worse than
Because once they get on the ceiling, we don't spray the ceilings. Just because it would jack up the paint. The products I use, it would stain it.
Right.
So once they get on the walls or in the walls, and they'll go in the walls as a result of someone spraying and putting down powders. The number one thing, if I could tell anybody, don't ever put down diatribasic earth. How they sell that, I have no idea.
What is that again?
Diatribasic earth is a powder. And if anybody out there that has put it down, they know when I'm about to tell them, try vacuuming it up. You will clog your vacuum. It's not just the vacuum that goes in. It's the little filter, the little... whatever those little filters are, that they're made of some type of
And this
fiber.
is a product they use to kill bed bugs?
Well, that's what they're supposed to be for.
Okay. But you never get rid of it off the carpet after you put it down.
It's so difficult. Okay. And the problem is that if you put down diatribasic earth, and then I come out and spray the products I use, the active ingredient in that powder, if it doesn't kill the active ingredient in my product, it'll make a clay you'll never get up. I mean, you might have to have it shampooed, the carpet. And of course, if you shampoo it, then you take up my product.
Right.
So I just tell people, I cringe I don't even want to do the job, quite frankly, but I will when they tell me to put powder down, because it's a nightmare to get rid of.
Sure.
And here's probably the worst thing. If I do have to put my heat equipment there and they have that powder down, we charge an extra $400 because I got to wear a respirator. Because once you get fans blowing that diatomaceous earth around, it'll put a cloud in the air, and you cannot breathe it in. It's not good for your lungs at all.
So you shouldn't even put it in the house then.
I wouldn't.
Right.
I wouldn't want to put that diatomaceous earth down, and then because most people run a fan, to sleep. They want some type of little white noise or a little. And if you got a fan blowing all the time, you're going to be breathing in that diatomaceous earth. I wouldn't do it. I would never do it, and it makes it super difficult to kill bed bugs after you put that down. And so let's say someone calls me and says, I've had bed bugs for over 6 months. That's one reason why you need to have heat. They're on the walls and ceiling. And the third is if they're in 3 rooms or more.
Okay.
And so if someone tells me, and if they check off all those boxes, I don't even bother talking about a spray. I just go directly to heat. And so when we do heat, I can go into that if you'd like.
Sure. What is that process like?
So I always try to knock the bed bugs out with a spray. Mm-hmm. If the spray's not, because I always try to do it the least expensive way possible. I mean, I could very easily try to scare people in and go, hey, go look at my reviews. I've got great reviews and I'm a bed bug specialist, and scare people into doing heat treatments. But I wouldn't want them doing that to me. If there's a way to get rid of them for $500 or right around there, I try to do it. And if my spray doesn't work, they don't lose that money. The heat is a fixed price based on the square footage. Okay. And then if they're a 2-story or a 3-story, then the price goes up a little bit more, because it's a nightmare doing a 3-story. Like those condos that go up 3 stories to get the garage down with 1 bedroom here. Then you got the kitchen, and then bedrooms are upstairs. Those are a nightmare too.
So you basically seal the house and blow hot air into the house?
No, that's the propane way.
Okay.
So my way is I've got a trailer that we have 150 gallons of propylene glycol, and it's got 100 gallons of diesel. Mm-hmm. And so the diesel runs a generator and a pump that will pump the propylene glycol through these tubes that go around these turbojets that are running off of diesel. So I create my own heat.
Okay.
So I heat up 150 gallons of propylene glycol, and then I pump it through insulated hydraulic hoses into a special manifold that splits off into 5 radiators.
Okay.
And so we put a radiator in every room. Typically, there's usually never more than 5 rooms upstairs and 5 rooms downstairs. Sure. That's a big house. And if I do like a 15,000 square foot house, I'll just bring one of my trailers from Austin or Houston up to Dallas or wherever, and we'll put 2 machines there and run 10 radiators.
Right. And it's the heat that kills the bugs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to go over the heats, because there's 3 temperatures that affect a bed bug. So at any rate, I'll put radiators in every room. I hook them up to this manifolds, and then they're insulated hydraulic hoses. I heat up the propylene glycol, pump it through a supply, and then it comes back on a return, and it just goes through that cycle being reheated. I heat it up to about 208 degrees. By the time it goes through the cycle, it comes back about 160 degrees. Once my return, the constant return, is 184, that house is cooking. And so once it gets up to heat, then I put my timer on my there's like 3 computers on my trailer. One regulates the heat for each room. We use the iMonitor system, put a towel over it that represents like a wall, put it on the floor. And then once that room gets up to heat, the timer starts. So if you have a bigger living room and you have a smaller bedroom, there's a valve on each radiator. So if the room gets too hot, because it's a 10 by 12, and then you have a living room that's got a 20-foot ceiling that's 15 by 24, well, that one's going to run for a lot longer, and the valve will never close. It'll just keep going. And so once I get the house up to heat, we heat it for 10 hours, 10 or 12 hours, depending on the size and what time of the year it is. The winter time, it's a little bit longer. Summer, obviously, is not. And then once that house is that temperature, and the return's 184, so if I start a job at 9 in the morning, I'll end it at 2 or 3 in the morning. Mm-hmm. and then I pull the equipment out, and then we start the process all over again the next
How
day.
many times do you have to do this to get rid of all the bed bugs? Or?
One time and done.
All right.
So there's a prep that somebody has to do. They have to prep their house for it.
Okay.
It's like painting a car. The most important part is the prep.
What do they have to do?
So they have to, obviously, you have to remove the candles because they'll melt all over the place.
Sure.
If you've got crayons in a drawer, well, they'll melt. I mean, it'll make a mess. And so we have a list of things on my website, Doffdon.com. If they want to go look at that, they can see it says pre-checklist. And I send everybody to it. They follow that. And then the day before or a couple days before the actual heat treatment's done, I usually have to go out and visit with them and make sure that everything's going smooth and then answer any questions that they might have.
Okay.
But they call me throughout the whole process. What about this? What about this? Because you can't have anything in the closets, which most closets, they're cluttered. I rarely go into a closet that's not got stuff all over the wall.
Right.
Luggage, empty luggage that they're just waiting. And so I'll go through, and in every house within 12 feet of the front entrance, usually there's a coat rack or something where people put their vacuum cleaners and luggage and all their winter coats and stuff. And all that has to be, I have to be able to get my hand through.
There's space between them and the wall.
So that the heat can get in between them and kill any bed bugs. But the chance of a bed bug being in your closet, you'd have to be totally infested. However, bed bugs are very interesting. And I'll tell you about the three temperatures. 111, 118, and 125. Well, what happens at 111? Well, they have a chemical in their brain that no longer connects. And at 111, they'll start spinning in a circle when you're doing a heat treatment, and they can't get away. So if you can get that house up to 111, 112 as fast as you can, they can't escape. And then 118, they have a natural wax, and that melts. And that exposure to 125 for just a couple minutes, some people say 124, 125, for a couple minutes, exposure will dehydrate them and they die.
Okay.
Yeah. And the eggs, same thing.
So in the treatment process, though, how about all the food in the refrigerators and all that stuff?
We eat that.
Okay.
Alcohol, we drink that.
That's part of the plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Popcorn gets popped. No, it won't hurt anything. The only thing we've ever seen hurt is, for some reason, honey. The top will get like white for the first inch. But outside of that.
So the food's fine. It's
just
you need the space between the.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything to the food.
And then when all the bed bugs are dead, do you go back in and clean it up, or what happens?
We're not a cleaning service.
So the folks come in and clean all that up, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's the thing. Most bed bugs, I mean, they when they die, they dry up pretty good. I mean, if some place had them all over the ceiling, they're going to have to not only vacuum up all of them, they'll probably have to repaint.
Right.
Because the feces, when a bed bug, I don't know, this sounds kind of crazy, but bed bugs will colonize in typically 5 to 20, and they'll leave colonies along the wall. Well, there's little black dots. That's feces. And we have a shop where we paint, put fingernail polish on the back of them, and it's the damnedest thing. Those bed bugs, if you paint one of them pink, and that's out of this colony, and you pick it up and you put it in a different spot, it'll go right back to that colony. So the feces gives off a pheromone that's how they know where they live. And from what I've read, there's several pheromones in the feces that will tell them that there's a food source here. So that's how they know, and they're attracted to carbon monoxide and heat.
Okay.
So, but
how does someone get infested with bed bugs? What happens?
Well, that's the gift that keeps giving, because they usually get them from someone.
Okay.
But the number one way that I found is, it used to be traveling was the way.
Okay.
Now it's kids, teenage kids that go to college, or teenagers, young adults. They go to college, they get bed bugs, they come back to mom and dad's house and they bring them. Or if they're in their teens, like 13, 14, they'll have stayovers at their friend's house. That friend has bed bugs. They bring their pajamas and an overnight bag, and when they come back, they bring bed bugs back. Okay. So when typically, when I get a call and I'm asking them a series of questions, I'll ask them, what room do you have them in? And the majority of people say, well, it's in my daughter or my son's room. Well, typically those kids got them from either traveling, they were at college, they came back, or they do stayovers with their friends. And if a parent tells me that they're in the master bedroom, but they're not in any other bedroom that they're aware of, they typically get them from traveling.
I see.
If they're older, they can get them from their healthcare provider. And I don't mean to point the finger at any of them, but it does happen often where you get a sweet little lady or husband and wife that are in their 80s and 90s, and you have a healthcare person, kind of babysitting them during the day.
Right.
Well, that person has them at their house, and when they come over, they can drop off a few in the chairs, and then of course they migrate to the patient because they're usually laying in bed.
Right. So it's very rare for someone to see them. It's more that they feel it on their body. Is that the typical way to?
Well, that's interesting too. That's a good question as well. Oddly enough, only 1 out of every 10 people has a reaction to a bedbug bite. That's how people get infested. It's because they have no idea. They have no reaction to a bedbug bite, and the only way they know they have it is somebody's changing the sheet. And they go, "What is this little bug?" And then they get it, they pop it, and it's got blood. And they go, "What kind of a bug is in bed that has blood?"
How big is this again?
Okay, so an adult can be the size of an apple seed.
Okay.
Pretty good size. You can see an apple seed from across the room.
Right.
Like that little dot over there.
Yeah.
But I'm joking. But no, they're now the nymphs, the little nymphs, they're almost transparent with a little black dot. They're tough to see.
Okay.
And they're fast as lightning. So the egg looks like rice, little pieces of rice. And they take up to, depending on humidity, up to 20 days to hatch.
Okay.
Some hatch a little bit sooner. Like I said, it depends on humidity. But typically when they hatch, they'll go get a meal right away. And they can go a long time without eating. You got mixed people saying they can go 1.5 years without eating. Some people say they can go 8 months without eating. I've never tested it that long. But I know for a fact they can go over 6 months without eating. Because I have a shop where we test all this stuff. And that's when we've determined that if there's a food source, they'll typically eat once a week, and it only takes 5 minutes for them to eat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so some experts say that bed bugs can hold their breath, or they can go without breathing. You could put them in a sealed container without oxygen for over 1 year. So they're the wonder bug. You're not going to drown them.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, as tough as they sound, they can go over 1 year without eating. So they sound like the wonder bug, but they're actually very fragile. When they reproduce, it's called traumatic insemination. The female's body is actually pretty tough. So what he uses to siphon or poke a hole in you and start sucking blood out is the same thing that he uses to get the female fertilized.
Oh, wow.
So what happens is after she feeds, her body elongates. It's a Latin word. It starts with a D. I don't know what it is, but I should know. But anyway, her body elongates and the membrane becomes very thin, and he's able to jab her. It's called traumatic insemination. He jabs her in the abdomen, and then she gets pregnant. But they say between 20 and 40% of the time it's a fatal wound. So she'll go off and lay the eggs and then die. So they're actually very fragile. And in fact, they breathe out of spheres on their back. If you can get 409 cleaner or Fantastic or anything, rubbing alcohol, if you spray them directly on the back, you can kill them. So, and that's the problem, is that they are fragile, but if you've got to make direct contact, and most of that products, if not all of them, won't kill the eggs. The eggs have to hatch, and then they have to walk across the product.
So just cleaning your bed sheets and vacuuming won't do this?
No.
Nothing? Okay.
No. And I don't know if this fact is still valid, but there's about 800 or 900 pest control companies, maybe even more than that, because the last time I checked, I think it was 1.5 years ago, and there was 875, and with all the people that's moved here, there's probably even more now.
Right.
And there was only 50 that out of the 800 or 900 that do bed bugs. So there's a lot of people just won't even mess with it.
And you specialize in bed bugs?
That's all I do. I don't do ants and roaches one day and termites the next. I just do bed bugs.
Can you tell us what a typical house cleaning is or a call is versus like a really a special one that you can think of that was really bad?
Well, okay. So I put them in levels, like a level 1 to level 9.
Okay.
Level 9 is the worst. Level 7 or 6. Once it gets to 6, you're talking about a heat treatment.
Okay.
Level 9 is when I walk into a house and I look up. The first thing I do is I look up, and I have a special light. And if I see them on the ceiling, I stop right there. And I say, you have to have a heat treatment. If I see them everywhere. And I went into a house, this lady called me, and she's one of the sweetest ladies on the planet. And she wanted to take care of her dad, and he didn't care. In fact, I got a video I could show you. This is probably not very nice to say, but I'm not saying any names and no addresses, of course. But when I say he had 10,000 bed bugs, that's not an exaggeration. I don't know what 10,000 looks like, but if 10,000 is the maximum you can have in a house where they're over everything, every chair, on the floors, on the ceiling. And when I say on the ceiling, I'm talking about every square foot had bed bugs on the ceiling. Every wall was stuffed with them, and all of his furniture. And anyway, this very, very nice lady hired me to take care of it for her dad. And he didn't have any reaction to the bites, but he was getting bitten 1,000 times a night. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm surprised you don't need a blood transfusion. I mean, that's how many bed bugs were there gobbling on him every night.
Right.
Thousands. Well, I said, I'm going to set off a couple bombs because I can't even go in. I had to set off a couple foggers to knock them off the ceiling. And I said, you're going to have to wait outside. And he goes, well, that's okay. I'm going to I hate to say this, but to the VA hospital. Mm-hmm. And while he was outside, and I'll show you a video, he had little red dots all over his pants. Those blue jeans.
From the bites.
That's for him crushing bed bugs, and the blood's over. And while I'm filming him, he's waiting for a rideshare car. Poor guy. And not the poor guy, the guy going to VA, the poor rideshare driver. While I'm filming him, he's killing bed bugs that are on his pants. He's crushing them. You can see him crawling on his legs. And so that's... that
was your worst, probably. Or one.
No. I had another one that's even better than that. The worst one I've ever done was, and that's a kind of an interesting story too. It was probably about 150 miles from here. And so I go out to this. I mean, she already told me they were all over her son's room and they were in the living room and stuff. And I said, well, you're going to need a heat treatment. So I walked her through what she needs to do as far as the pre-checklist. When I got there, I always loved doing an elephant. And I bagged the elephant that day. That was the worst one I've ever done. And I'm talking, it made this other guy that I just told you about. He's a single guy with a dog. It was worse than his. I wouldn't say it made his look like nothing, because his was something too. But this one, so and the house was probably a $700,000 house. It was not a cheap house. They had a nice piece of land, and she looked like a nice lady. Well, she was a nice lady, and he was a nice guy too. And I said, you've had bed bugs for 2 or 3 years. She goes, yeah, about 3 years. And I said, well, why are you just now? Because it doesn't look like you're lacking money. I don't look rich, but I mean, it didn't look like money was a problem. She goes, no, it's not. It's just that. I said, well, what made you decide to get a bed bug treatment? And she goes, well, I went into my bank, and I'm in line, and all of a sudden, some guy behind me flips out, and he starts running out, and he goes and talks to the manager, and the manager comes out to me and says, you need to leave right now. If you have banking to do, you do it through the drive-through. She goes, why? She goes, well, because the customer found a couple bed bugs crawling on your shoulder. She goes, well, I was so insulted. She goes, I'm going to take all my money out of this bank. And she goes, well, whatever you got to do. The bank manager said, you need to leave right now. And I said, is that when you decided? She goes, no. She goes, 2 nights later, I took my grandkids to a little Italian restaurant. We were going to get a pizza. And so it was me, my husband, and 2 grandkids, a boy and a girl. And they were sitting there in a little booth. And there was a table of 9 or 10 that had just sitting down right outside the booth. And they went in there for 5 minutes, and everybody got up and basically ran out. And then the manager came out and said, "We're getting your food to go. You need to leave right now."
Because they were showing
She
bugs.
goes, "Why?" She goes, "Well, because the customers here saw bed bugs crawling on you and crawling across the table. We can't have that." And she goes, "This is a small town. I'm going to get expelled from every place." She goes, "I thought it was time." Because her son didn't show any signs of bites, nor her or her husband. And so her son's room was the worst I've ever seen. How someone could live like that, I have no idea. He was a messy boy too. Wow. But and so I love those jobs. But I also, they do make it a little bit of a challenge because I don't want to get them and then try to bring them home or to my office. And I've brought them back to my shop a couple times. And
that was definitely a heat treatment then.
Oh yeah.
So when you do the heat treatment, there's no chemical treatment then?
No, you have to do a chemical.
Both. Yeah.
Yeah. So typically what I do is I'll spray the house first, even though when you get the temperature to 140, it kills the active ingredient. So basically it's kind of like waste. But let's say I spray all the perimeter and all the quarter trim pieces. Because if they're out here and the heat's starting to bug them and they do decide to go in the quarter trim, they've already touched the product and then they go underneath there. And if they do try to escape, the toughest houses are pier and beams, because if the house isn't just perfectly solid, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you're adjusting a house on a pier and beam, if you're adjusting it because they fall pretty easy, it doesn't take much. You can pop a window. So they got to jack it up, let the house settle, jack it up a little bit more. But the reason I'm bringing it up is these houses settle over time, and there'll be a crack in the wall or on the floor. Well, bed bugs can sense hot and cold, and if this place is hot and they can sense a cool spot over here, they're going to go there and then go down in the crack. And then they find a way down to the foundation, down into the dirt. So you got to be so you have to spray it first, just in case you get one of these guys that can go down there. And so anyway, that's what I do. I'll spray it and then I heat it. Of course, everything I sprayed is dead because I heated it so hot. And then I pull my equipment out, and then it'll usually drop from about 150 down to 138. I've got a little laser camera that I can shoot on the walls, and it'll tell me the ambient temperature and then the surface temperature. And the surface temperature has to be under 140. If it's 150 or 145 and I put my chemical down, it'll kill the active ingredient. It's a waste. So you have to let the house cool down enough. And what I typically do, and I'm not trying to give my trade secrets away, but I'll give you this one, is I'll heat it and then I come back in a few days once the house completely cooled down, and then I'll do an inspection and another spray.
Okay.
So that they have a residual there.
Right.
Because, and really the reason for that spray is not that the heat didn't do its job, and I'm not accusing any customer of not doing this, but if they don't do that laundry just right, because we have them do it at a coin laundromat, we tell them to put it in a dryer half full so that the dry clothes can tumble. And they got to do it for 40, 50 minutes at a coin laundromat because they have a 190 thermostat there, and most residentials are in the 160 or so.
Okay. So they're disinfecting their clothes.
So yeah, because we don't spray the clothes. So if they're on their clothes, but if the clothes are in the closet hanging, and as long as I can get my hands in between them, the heat will penetrate it and it'll kill anything on it. Right. But the clothes that are in their drawers, the sock drawers and underwear and all their T-shirts and stuff, they do have to do their own laundry.
Right. Wow. Okay, so tell us what a call is like. Man, you're getting customers.
No.
Tell us what it's like when you're, if it's 6 or below, what the typical treatment is.
So, without going into pricing, because I want people to call me for that, if you don't mind.
No problem.
But so if someone, 6 is still, I mean, you're talking about heat, even a 5 could be. But like I said, if it's a 6 or under, I try to do a spray. Now, if it's a 7 or 8, I don't even bother spraying it. Right. I just go doing the heat, because it's going to have to take heat in order to get rid of it. I don't want to waste the material because it costs me a lot of money.
Right.
But let's say it's a 4 or 5. Most of the homes I do are 1 to 3. That's the majority of them. And we do about 30 houses a day, if you take the whole state of Texas.
And it's just a spray, really?
80 to 90% of every home we do is a spray.
Okay. Is it a one-time thing, or do you come back?
Yeah, it's a one-time.
Okay.
I very rarely ever have to go back and do a second spray. Although It depends. If that laundry's not done just right and one survives or a couple survives on there, it's not the sheets I'm worried about, because the sheets always get done right. It's the comforter. And they don't live on the comforter, but you could wad one up in a comforter, put it in a dryer. The outside of the dryer gets to 160, but the inside of it only gets to 115. It's not hot enough to kill it.
Right.
And so typically, or I'll spray, and then I come back to the house, and they put encasements on all the stuff I sprayed. I said, well, why'd you do that without calling me? Because basically what they did is when you put an encasement, after I spray the special product over the mattress and box springs, if you put an encasement on it, you'll basically be protecting the bed bug from walking across the product. They'll just walk across with immunity.
What's an encasement?
So you can get encasements, and I don't mean to nog my competitors, because I just don't want to do that, although I am. No, I'm joking. I'm not going to do that. But let's say that you have there's twofold reasons. Some of these houses I go into, there's hundreds, if not 500 bed bugs on the mattress or box spring, and they leave feces marks everywhere. It's very nasty. Well, there's two things you can do. You could spray it and then encase it, and then now your mattress with a nice brand new encasement looks brand new. So that, why would you get rid of it now? It looks new because it's got a new encasement on it. But what you've done is you've entrapped those in there. God forbid that spray, those bed bugs are chemically resistant to it. And 6 months from now, you move the bed around and the bed gets snagged on a board, or worse yet, like a screw on the metal frame and rips it. Well, you just opened up Pandora's box.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't put encasements on anything. I tell everybody you have to take them off, and then I spray. Because typically, the products that are out there, they don't bond to elasticity. Mm-hmm. They just don't bond. I don't think it bonds. It bonds really good with the fabric, but not the...
How long after the spray can someone go back in?
That's a great question. So typically, I tell people 2 hours. Stay out of the rooms I sprayed for 2 hours. And then you don't want to touch the mattresses or box springs until they're completely dry. And it could take, if I spray the hell out of it, it could take 9 hours to dry.
Okay.
8 or 9 hours. So most people don't want to do a spray later in the afternoon. They want to wait. They want to do them in the morning by 1. Because if you do it by 1, you're looking at 8 or 9 o'clock before you can put the sheets on.
Right.
And the number one thing I like to tell people is once I spray, you have to go back to life as normal that night. If not that night, the next night. You don't want to stay out of that room, because bed bugs will stay dormant until you go in that room and you start exhaling carbon monoxide, and they see a heat signature. Then they come out and walk across the product and die. But if you just, we just had the room sprayed, I'm going to go stay in the guest room for a couple weeks.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Well, then they'll just stay dormant. Or worse, they'll say, hey, where's our meal? And they'll send a scout out. The scout's going to find you, poop on the wall. There's going to be a pheromone that says there's a food source in this room, and then you'll have them move up to that room.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you kind of as bait that allows them to walk across the
bait or a guinea pig. Yeah.
Right.
People don't like to say, well, you got to be bait. Someone's got to be bait in here, or a guinea pig. They don't like that. But for the lack of a better term, that is exactly what they're doing. Someone's got to be in there. And typically, if the wife has all the signs of the bites, usually a good husband will go sacrifice himself and then until they all die.
That's awesome. All right, so that was great. Take us back to, your sister tells you about bed bugs. How'd you start the company?
Oh my God, this is good. This is good and bad.
Okay.
Because it might make me look like a fool, but it's things that when you're going down a path, and especially when you're trying to reinvent yourself in life, that you can go to the right or you can go to the left. So when I got these machines, these heating machines.
And you were already all in to start the company by this time. Okay.
I went all in. I found the machines, had them tweaked up in Canada, and we'll just leave it at that. Had them delivered. The day they were delivered, God, I don't know.
And you used your own savings.
Oh, yeah. All my savings.
No loans, no investors, nothing. Okay.
No, I did pretty good as a stockbroker.
Why did you make that? What caused you to go, I'm going to do this?
Well, because when I found out that there's so many bed bugs, I did a ton of research and about what machines work, what doesn't, what chemicals work. and stuff. And I thought, well, and I wasn't going to do any chemicals. I was going to be a 100% eco-friendly company.
Sure.
And so, and eco-friendly meaning just heat, no chemicals.
Right.
And so,
did you have to take certifications or less classes?
That's an interesting. Okay. That's a great question, and that's what led me to where I'm at today. So, I bought these machines. They were delivered on a Saturday morning at 7:00 in the morning. The delivery guy coming from Canada, and I got 4 of them. And I have a pretty good sized yard, so we put them here, and I had anyway. So I'm looking online because I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be the apartment king of bedbugs.
And this was Doffdon.
This is Doffdon,
okay.
Yeah.
You have a website, company, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, got a website going, everything. Yeah. Doffdon Pest Control, and so I'm Google searching, because I'm thinking I got to meet these managers. Well, when I was Google searching, the Dallas Greater Apartment Association was having a vendor meeting over off of 35 and Stemmons. It was a big, where they had the gun show and stuff.
Yeah, right.
I thought, this is perfect for me. So I went over there. I walked in, which I shouldn't have, because I wasn't a vendor.
Okay.
But I was going to be. I had my business cards all done up. I was wearing my Doffdon shirt. And I walk in there like I own the place. And I won't say the guy's name, because he really tried screwing me over. But little did he know, he did the best thing that ever happened to me.
Okay.
So...
And you have no clients at this time?
I'm not clients.
Okay.
I've just started. I just got my equipment that morning. So I see this. So I fly down there. It starts at noon. I get dressed up, cleaned up, put my shirt on. I head down there, walk through the front door. There's vendor stations everywhere, pest control. Every pest control company was there. All the apartment complexes were there. All the managers were there, being introduced to vendors. And I walked right in. I wasn't in there for 50 seconds, maybe a minute at the most. And this guy will say either Orkin or Terminex. I'm not going to say which one. Okay. And he comes up to me and he sees the Doffdon shirt and he goes, "Hi, Doffdon, I've never seen that before." And I said, "Yeah, I just started." And he goes, "Really?" And I said, "I specialize in bed bugs and heat treatment." He goes, "How long have you been licensed?" I said, "I'm not." He goes, "Well, how are you, first off, how are you a vendor? And secondly, how are you doing without a license?" I said, "I don't need a license. I'm just doing heat." He goes, "Oh, okay." I wasn't there another 30 seconds, and security came and escorted me right out.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, that little son of a gun, he got me kicked out. But that's all right. That's all right. Monday morning, I get a knock on the door. And I looked out the thing, and it's 2 people in a business suit. And I go, "Who's that?" And it's the Department of Agriculture. They're asking me, "Hey, how long have you been in business?" "A couple days." "How many jobs have you done?" "I haven't done any." They said, "Well, good, because for every job you do, you're going to get a $1,000 fine. And for every day your website's up, you're going to get a $1,000 fine."
How long was your website up?
Well, from that point on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it had been up for a week. I said, "Well, hold on. I've got a problem with that. Let me call my attorney." So my attorney, and I won't go into all the details with who he is and stuff, but he's a very, let's put it this way, he won a Johnson & Johnson lawsuit, and very few people win against Johnson & Johnson. I'll leave it at that. But at any rate, so they basically were showing me the statute, which did not apply, in my personal opinion. I'm sorry, Department of Agriculture. I love you very much if you're watching this, and I fully comply. But at the time, I said, well, wait a second. And I'm not knocking the Department of Agriculture, but this is just the way the system is. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. They want their fees, which every pest control company pays fees, which is fine. I understand that. And there's a purpose for it. They want to regulate. Because if there wasn't this, why then you'd have every Tom, Dick, and Harry doing pest control.
Right.
And there's a potential they could hurt someone or take advantage of someone. So I totally understand now, but I didn't understand at the time. I thought it was just about control. Someone wanted to control me, and that it was they wanted their money. So when we went back and forth, I said, well, okay, look at it from my standpoint. People can go to Home Depot, buy all the chemicals they want. Look at Roundup. They let them sell Roundup by the billions. And look at all the people that died and all the billion-dollar lawsuits. Well, if you're worried about people, they should outlaw anybody buying any chemical then. Mm-hmm. So if you really care, why do you care that I put chemical in different? Listen, we're going down a different rabbit hole. The point is you have to have a license. And I said, well, so let me get this straight. The problem is not the reason why people can go buy a chemical and push the button is because they're pushing the button, not me. I'm not the one pushing the button to kill someone. So I got to be regulated if I'm the one killing someone. And if they want to do it to themselves, that's fine. Basically, in a nutshell, that's it. That's why you can go to Home Depot, buy all the hot shot you want. There's those foggers, set off 3 of those and don't leave the house, and they'll be having an obituary for you. Right. It's that simple. You could kill yourself real easy with that stuff. But they are doing it to themselves, not Don Brooks doing it to them. I said, okay, so the difference is that someone else is pushing the button. And I got an epiphany. Well, I'm going to be a Doffdon bedbug heat equipment rental. And that's what I did. So I got my brother, who's one of my marketing guys, a couple of my brothers, and I said, I want you to call every pest control company in Dallas-Fort Worth. And I say, do you do bedbugs? Because nobody does bedbugs. Why don't you? Well, I don't have the equipment. Well, we rent the equipment. Here's the price. You can charge whatever you want. And all you have to do is come out and pick it up on your truck, or we'll deliver it. We signed up 135 companies the first month, and I was booked out. And I was rental. So I took off Doffdon Pest Control and did Doffdon rental.
Awesome.
So I got all these people renting my equipment. I was doing perfect. And I thought, well, hell, I might as well take my license. So I went down to the testing center, told the person at the testing center, which is a very popular person, I'm not going to say his name, but he trains a lot of people. He's phenomenal. I love him very much.
How long was you studying for? How difficult?
Okay. So I had just started the rental, and everything was going good. All my equipment was booked out for weeks. You can't book it out for months because most people won't wait a month.
Right.
They're going to find someone else. But I always booked out a week, and I never ever had a problem with any. All my equipment is rented at all the time.
Right.
So I could breathe. I have all these 4 trailers. They're all rented. Everything's going good. And then I said, well, I'm going to go take my test. So I told him the story I just told you, basically. He goes, well, all you need is a RCA, a responsible certified applicator. I said, yeah, I guess. He goes, well, I can be one for you. And I said, what would you charge me to do it? And he told me. And he goes, I'll be your RCA. Like that. I took off Doffdon equipment, bedbug equipment rental, to Doffdon Pest Control. Back in business, filled out all the paperwork, and I'm now a pest control company.
So he's basically your sponsor?
He was.
Okay.
So while not a sponsor, he was my RCA, Responsible Certified Applicator.
What does that mean, though?
Well, you got to be, there's an apprentice. Mm-hmm. That's what if you were to go get a job, you'd start out as an apprentice.
Right.
You're going to be an apprentice for a while. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to get your technician's license. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to have that for a while.
Okay.
And then I don't know what the data, how many months it is. I think it's 6 months, or it could be less. It could be 3 months. I don't know. It's been so long.
And is that a test to become a technician?
Yes.
Okay.
And it is, it's a serious test.
Okay.
And then once you become a technician, then you take your certified applicator's license.
Okay.
Once you get your certified applicator license, it's just a designation. RCA is a designation. It's not another test to become a responsible certified. If you put your name and you're the only CA, you are, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would automatically be the RCA.
Okay.
And so I went and got all my license, and I became my own RCA.
Was that a difficult thing to do for you?
No.
How long does this take typically?
Let me tell you something. If you could pass the Series 7 exam, which I passed a Series 7 and a 63 and a 55 and a 27, this is a piece of cake.
Sure.
Yeah. The Series 7 was the hardest test I ever took in my life.
Okay. But for regular folks who don't have your background, is this a difficult task to do, taking all these tests and passing them?
No. Okay. I mean, it's hard, but it's not that hard. Okay. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
And these are all state mandated?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. You have to have that in order to spray.
Okay.
And there's different regulations. If you're an apprentice. You could go do certain things, but you have to have a technician that follows up with you a couple times a week. And then the RCA has to follow up with the technician. There's rules and regulations that you have to go by.
Okay. Right.
And so that's how I got into it. And then when I became my own pest control, well, of course, I was renting out my equipment, and then if I would fill in my jobs when my equipment wasn't rented, or if somebody wanted to rent it and I was doing a job, the equipment wasn't available.
Right.
And then just from doing the business, you learn what requires heat, where heat's going to go.
How are you getting your first set of clients when you started spraying?
That's the craziest thing. Thank you, Google, is all I can say. I had a website, and I didn't have it, I still have it. And I just went and started doing Google ads, where you run an ad that brings traffic to your website. But that doesn't mean they're going to call you.
Right.
I could have, my biggest thing was my Doffdon logos were on the side of my trailer. And so whenever I put my trailer in front of a house, you could go look at the clicks from all the neighbors, nosy neighbors probably, wanting to know what the hell is that trailer with all those hoses going into that house for?
Right.
And it's running all night. So I would get a ton of business that way. And if they didn't have bed bugs then, and if they saw Doffdon, they go, well, hey, I can't say how much business. I don't know if I got any out of it or if I got a ton of it, from that trailer being in, because it was parked every night, and I had people clicking. All the neighbors would click because they wanted to know what's going on.
Did your phone calls go up too, I guess?
No, not really, but the website clicks would go.
Right.
And then I think, even though Google, which I love, by the way, it's a little bit slower when they're going to your website. My website is more educational. It's not this little white thing that says "call me now" and they got some cartoon character.
Yeah.
I wanted to educate people about bed bugs and about chemicals versus heat. Heat's always better. Heat's guaranteed one time and done, but you don't always have to have heat, as I said earlier. And so at any rate, I guess things kind of exploded when I got on with the. I don't know how to introduce this other part, but let's put it this way. I had a lucky break,
right,
with doing some police cars,
right,
and it caught on the news, and that I do a lot of ride shares, and that catapulted Doffdon, in my opinion,
to another level of customers and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
And that's a good segue because it's not just in houses. These bed bugs can get in your vehicles too, right?
Oh yeah. As I was mentioning earlier, that guy going to that VA had a ride share, and of course I don't want to say the names, but of those ride shares. But anybody can get bed bugs. It doesn't matter. I do multi-million-dollar homes, and I do shacks that should be condemned. It doesn't matter. If you go in, and I don't want to scare anybody, but when I go into a movie theater, which I don't go hardly anymore because there's no good movies, but if there is a good movie, I bring my light, and I look like I lost my contacts, or I'm looking for something because I'm looking at all 3 or 4 chairs around me to make sure there's no damn bed bugs on it before I sit there for an hour and a half watching a movie. I'm paranoid the whole time watching the movie. Who sat here before me?
Wow.
And that's the only reason I'm paranoid is because there's an old expression, and I don't know if you've heard this, and I've heard it came from this: once bitten, twice shy. Now, a lot of people associate that with love. Once you've been bitten, you're twice shy if you got your heart hurt. But actually, that phrase came from the 1850s when they got bed bugs. Once you got bitten, you were shy about having anybody come over to your house and stay. And so, because back then in the 1850s, their beds were made out of iron, and they put hay or whatever they put, lamb's wool or whatever to make the bed. They would go out and just burn the bed, and the iron was still good. They let it cool down and put it back and make a new bed. That's how they got rid of bed bugs back then.
Wow. So it's not just a line from a Wham song about Christmas, right? So,
I don't know.
So tell us what your typical day's like right now. Like you get up in the morning, go to work. What's your day like as a business owner? Yeah.
So my office is open till 11.
Okay.
I have my phone on mute, but I do have the things, and I've already gotten 3 calls since I've been here.
Sure.
But I'll answer those later. But typically, someone will call me when they get home from work. I get most of my scheduling done from 7 in the evening till 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, they're calling you at night.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because they'll either be sitting on the
Right.
watching TV on a sofa, and one crawls on their arm and go, "What the hell?"
Right.
And then they'll call me. And we'll schedule, and I typically do about 4 or 5 jobs a day myself.
Are you still going out? Okay.
Oh yeah. And I do all the douse, and then the guys I have, one in Austin, one in Houston, they do about 4 or 5.
Okay.
And then we do heat treatments every day. And typically I get up at 6 in the morning. I'll go set up the heat, come back, take my daughter and I go to the gym. I know it doesn't look like it, but because I eat a lot of donuts and stuff. But I have to go to the gym. Otherwise, I won't be able to pick up the damn equipment because one radiator is 75 pounds with 5 gallons worth of propylene glycol in it. So they're heavy.
Right.
And then the hoses with all the propylene glycol in them, if you don't strain it out, I mean, they're probably 150 pounds a piece. And then they'll.
So this is a physically taxing job.
Oh God, yeah. I'm going to have to retire because I'm getting too old to physically do it. And that's why you can't hardly find anybody that can work for you because it's a tough job.
Is that because we've heard this from other folks that we've done the podcast with, business owners. Is it hard to find good help and technicians for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to find, I think, anybody that's good. And when you get somebody that's good, then if they're good, you are training your future competitor.
Right.
Which I don't care. I'm happy to do.
Right.
And, well, I'm not happy to do it, but I do it, and I don't want to hold anybody back. So if I get good enough, if I train someone, but what I don't want to do is have somebody that work for me for 6 months and then think they can go do it on their own and then screw up the business.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people that, I don't want to say unethical, but there are a lot of unethical people that they don't care. They just go zip, zip, zip. When I spray the hell out of it. And my philosophy is, and I tell the guys that work for me, I treat everybody like they're a family member. I know that sounds cliche, but I really do. I call everybody brother or sister, and when I spray it like I got to sleep there that night. And I think if people do that, if you're in the pest control business or if you're even an employee, if you're an employee, you got to practice that before you own your own place. You're not going to just go from a lazy zip, 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 and then when you start getting business of your own, I'm going to do a little more serious then. You got to become serious. And I think that was that and some good luck. I don't believe in luck, but good being at the right place at the right time.
Right.
And doing it right. And so if I tell someone I can do something, I do it. That's my, and if I don't think that I can do it, then I wouldn't go into a house if this was a level 7 and say, I can do spray, just let me spray it. I would never, ever do that. If this was really a heat treatment, I would say, this may not work. There's a good chance this isn't going to work. I mean, I'll let you apply this money we're putting toward a heat, but I don't want you to get your hopes up. And I'm not optimistic. I'll spray the hell out of it, and we'll see if it works. Give it 30 days, because I don't do every house I spray. If they do want to do heat, they have to give that spray 30 days.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't want to waste the money. If they can't give it time for the bed bugs to go through all their cycle, which you have to wait till the eggs hatch. The spray that I spray doesn't kill the eggs. They got to hatch, and then they got to walk across it, and that could take 2 weeks or so. So I'm very adamant about it. You got to give it 30 days. And then at the end of 30 days, if I have to eat the spray, put it toward the heat, then of course I'm happy to do it.
Right.
So,
what do you tell folks that want to get into the business? Do you have any advice or tips for them, what they can expect?
Yeah, become a painter or sell cars. I'm joking. It's okay. That is a great question. And here's my answer. There's two types of pest control. Oh, there's probably a bunch of different types, but the two types that I see are ones that do it all, like ants, roaches, spiders,
right?
And they have the residual. You don't want to get into this business because I don't know where my next customer is going to be 3 days from now.
Why do you say that?
Oh, I don't.
Okay.
Because the farthest I book out is a week, unless it's heat. And I've gone out 2 weeks. But typically, it's three days to 4 days is the maximum I'm out.
Okay.
Who I'm going to do next, what's today? Wednesday? Tuesday? I have no idea who I'm doing Tuesday next week. But a general pest control guy has a residual. He'd get this house or building, and then he'll get the next building or the next house, and he'll put flyers and say, listen, I'm doing David's house here. Can I do your house? I'm out here once a month, and this is what I'm going to do. I charge $100 or $90 or whatever it is every quarter. They try to sell them on every month,
right.
But most people go out a quarter, and they'll get $110 or $100 a quarter, and they'll get 20 or 30 homes right here. So the guy doesn't have to move his truck. He can knock out all these homes in an hour and a half, and that's a residual income. When you just do bed bugs only, there is no residual. And I like it like that. I've never had a down month. I've never had to worry about it. I don't know how, but the phone just rings.
Right.
And I'm fortunate. I'm very fortunate. But I would say if you're wanting to get into this, start saving your money. Because the heat equipment, if you buy crap heat equipment, you won't be in the business long. Because you won't get rid of bed bugs. You'll end up damaging someone's home, and you're going to get a bad reputation. If you get the right equipment and you do it the right way, then you're going to have a good reputation. So this is I guess what I don't even know if I should say this, but the fact that I have that heating equipment, I can go into someone's house with 100% confidence. There's never a job that I can't get done. Never. I don't care what it is. I don't care what building it is. There's never a bed bug situation that I can't handle, that I can't take care of. So, because I know I got that heat back in me. And even if I can't get my heat equipment there, I've got another couple tricks up my sleeve where if they have a sprinkler system. Because most of these apartments today, when I thought I was going to be the apartment king, I only do like 8 apartments a week. That's nothing compared to what I normally do. So if you've been watching these apartments go up, they're a big parking garage with a building around it.
Right.
And they're 4 or 5 stories high. They're as big as 4 Noah Arks, and they all have sprinkler systems. Well, you can't do an apartment. You can't do heat there, and it's illegal. And you can't get insurance if you cap that. If you cap that, you're breaking the law, unless it's a university. And the university has their own fire department. I don't know if you know that or not, and I don't do any universities because I won't bring my heat in there. Because if that thing pops off, if that thing goes off, you're going to flood that and a bunch of apartments around it.
Right.
And anyway, so I don't do that many apartments, but I have a trick up my sleeve. If someone's really badly infested in an apartment like that, they just have to call me and I'll come out there and take care of it. But fortunately for me, I have the heat equipment that can back me up. So if I do a spray and a spray just isn't going to work, I have that. But if you're just doing spray, you can't go into a house with 100% confidence, because if you can't get rid of them, well, are you going to give them their money back? Because if you can't tell someone, I can get rid of these. Well, if you don't have heat, the heat's the ultimate. Well, then there's no way you could have that confidence, because you can't guarantee a spray. I don't care what spray you're working with, and I'm not going to name any because I don't want to promote any.
Has there been shortages in the spray recently with all the logistics?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And yes, the answer is yes. And it scares the living hell out of me. And it could happen again. We ran out of this chemical that I use. And when I say we, I mean you couldn't buy it.
Right, not just you, everybody.
Everybody.
Right? Yeah.
And it scared the living tar out of me. Fortunately, thank God, for some wild reason, I went and bought an extra triple what I normally would. I don't know why, but I just did.
It's just something.
And when I got down to my last one, I went and said, well, I've only got one of those left. I better, and they last about, with me, they last about a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went back to my supplier and he goes, we've been out for 2 months. I was like, oh my God, if I wouldn't have bought those 3 months worth, triple what I'd be in trouble.
Right.
Well, actually, he said he went out for about a month. But anyway, the bottom line is, I got lucky.
How long did that last for? The shortage?
It depends, how many sprays I do a day, and I've got a guy in Austin and Houston that spray too. So and I provide that for them.
Right.
But at any rate, I've been very fortunate.
Well, Don, I think this is one of the most informative podcasts we've done. I'm enthralled. Before we leave, I think we'll end here, but you want to say something about yourself and the company and give a little plug?
No, that's okay. I mean, they can go to doffdon.com if they have any questions. That's basically it.
All right.
But thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was great. I'm going to go check my house now. So
I'll do a free inspection for doing this.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.